What's up, meta nerds? This video is all about the species that looks a lot like a stereotypical gray alien, the Duros. This humanoid species is native to Duro, a densely polluted and mostly depopulated planet located on the Corellian trade spine, making it easily accessible to other major commercial centers, as the spine was a commonly used hyperspace route. This humanoid species are about the same height as Wookiees, and they have smooth skin that is a blue-greenish color. They have large red eyes, beneath which are olfactory organs, which give them their sense of smell. Because they could smell through their eyes, there was no need for a physical nose on their face. If you've watched the Star Wars Clone Wars animated series, you may have encountered a certain bounty hunter of the Duro species, Cad Bane. Bane wasn't a very talkative character, but as it turns out, his species is known for being pretty quiet. That being said, if the conversation shifted to adventures, the Duros loved telling stories about their travels, and it's said that they have a photographic memory, being able to remember even the most minute details. As one of the first cultures to develop hyperdrive technology, many Duros were pilots and explorers. Even in later periods of galactic history, it's said that they have a love for flight and exploration, and regardless of what they do in their day-to-day life, they still prefer the title of traveler. They use trade routes that were made by their ancestors, and are one of the few cultures still using ancient space routes for trade during the reign of the Empire, and their language of Durisi was adopted from a common language between pilots. Now back to their homeworld, Duro is extremely polluted, and covered in automated farms for food production. The bulk of the Duro population live in 20 orbiting cities above the planet, along with a large number of orbital shipyards. The Duros were able to establish a starship industry that rivaled the one in the Corellian system, but this also meant that these corporations had a large effect on the government in Duro. In fact, the government was mostly built around corporations and shareholders were the ones that made all of the important decisions in their government. Anyone that held stock in one of these corporations had a say on what laws were passed in the system. It's also important to note that the Neimoidian species came from the Duros. As one of the first civilizations to conquer space travel, they were also one of the founding races of the Galactic Republic. The Duros found the planet Neimoidia and colonized it, and that resulting colony eventually evolved in response to the new environment, creating the similar but distinct Neimoidian species. They retained many of the same physical traits, such as the noseless faces and green-blue skin, but the Duros did not appreciate their new relatives, so that calling a Duros a Neimoidian is one of the most offensive insults you can use towards a Duros. Eventually, with the rise of the New Republic, the Duros were more tolerant of the Neimoidians, and learned to become respectful of their business skills. The Duros were generally bald, regardless of gender, but even with the similarities between them, it is said that you could easily tell the difference between the two. The female Duros laid eggs, and their young were born in a larval state. The Duros, unlike the Neimoidians, actively cared for their young and families. And we can see where the Neimoidians' love of lending stemmed from their ancestral Duros culture. The Duros lending institutions had strict traditions that carried with them severe social stigmas when a Duros was found unable to comply with the agreed upon lending terms. What I've said about the Duros so far makes it hard to picture them ever having been conquered by another species, but the Duros in fact had quite a complicated history. They originated on the planet Duro as far back as 100,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, when it was recorded that the Duro were surveyed by the Kalumi, who found nothing of interest to report on the planet and left them alone until they might be more evolved. Later, in 30,000 BBY, the Rakata took an interest in the Duros. It seems that in the years since the Kalumi had discovered them, they had evolved enough to pique the Rakata's interest, and were, as a result, conquered and enslaved. I want to go ahead and pause there, and in part 2, we'll talk about how being slaves to the Rakata actually may have helped the Duros, and what their role would be in the formation of the Old Republic, and how they were treated during the Clone Wars and under the Empire, and their very unique relationship with the Yuuzhan Vong. Hope to see all of you guys soon in part 2.